Good luck.
So good afternoon, and thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to meet with Goldfinch Partners. And we want to reiterate to you, the board of Facebook, the effectiveness of our proposed ethics-based solution for your company so that hopefully you can take from our council and implement ethical guidelines for Facebook. This, we think, will help Facebook establish itself as one of the leading companies of the day in regards to how private consumer data is managed. So during our meeting with you yesterday, we discussed Facebook's perceived role in the protection of consumer private information in the data industry. And Goldfinch really feels that Facebook ought to recognize the opportunity it possesses to really change the world of business with how it incorporates ethics into its business practices. Last session, we discussed the implementation process of our proposed DOME system for Facebook, which stands for Data Operation for Managing Ethics. And our system that we're proposing to you is ideal because ethics is baked into it, as opposed to ethics playing second fiddle to company processes. We break this system down into 4 key ethical pieces: human dignity, subsidiarity, justice, and truth. I'd like to start out by explaining the principle of human dignity. Goldfinch essentially will be able to ensure that the human dignity of the Facebook consumer is respected by firstly providing a ranking system in which consumers will be able to evaluate the ethical ranking of companies that associate with or do business with Facebook. Human dignity in this sense means to treat people with respect, and as an extension of treating consumers with respect, treating their data with respect, rather than that being a separate matter in and of itself. Human dignity means to treat people with respect, and we realize that in this increasingly digitized world, data has become the extension of the consumer. And as such, we feel that data needs to be treated with securely and carefully. And with the DOME system, Facebook will be able to implement measurable processes within the walls of your company to ensure that private consumer data is protected. When we analyze huge scandals that Facebook's been embroiled in throughout the years, such as the Cambridge Analytica scandal, Facebook has gotten themselves in trouble because in regards to how they manage the data, the private information of consumers. So in this scandal, consumer data was compromised by a third-party company that had associations with Facebook. And through the aftermath of this situation, we can clearly see that Facebook neglected its duty to ensure that consumer information was secure. When Facebook doesn't treat consumer information with care, or they neglect to properly screen and evaluate those in which they're doing business dealings with, this is to the detriment of the consumer. Some of this data might include things such as financial information, account passwords, personal, private conversations that consumers may not want out there. So in this instance, we feel that Facebook may not be, is to be obligated to adhere to the principle of human dignity. I'd like to move to the second tenet of our ethical framework, which is the principle of subsidiarity, which my colleague Elizabeth will explain in full detail.
Thanks, Jamal. So first, I'd just like to take a second to define what subsidiarity is. So subsidiarity is ensuring that employees at all levels of the company are empowered to make the best ethical decisions based on what their position is. This means that everyone from HR to data scientists to project managers, everybody down to the custodians are working all on the same page, grounded in ethics. So as my colleague Jamal mentioned, our solution framework ensures that ethical conduct is baked into Facebook's culture. And of course, this does start with the CEO, but this also involves everybody at all levels of the company. The great thing about our solution is that we're going to be using a team that includes a team lead, data scientists, law experts, business analysts, financial and accounting analysts as well, that will be able to help with the training and implementation of the ethical framework at all levels of the company for employees that have all different positions so that they can apply it to their respective roles in the company. This is responsibility and empowerment at the individual level. An example of this might be creating a management policy that allows or encourages employees to speak up if they see something unethical happening at the level that they're working at. The basic idea here is who better to understand your industry and your company than you. So if we leave this role up to the government, there's hefty and expensive regulations. You might get challenges in court that end up being expensive, and your employees aren't as empowered if you go with a system that's not within the company itself. we already saw some of the consequences of this in the EU with the General Data Protection Regulation. This can cost up to 4% of a company's net revenue to adhere to. And we see kind of a trend in the legislation in the US and in recent Supreme Court cases that are identifying more and more that private data is to be associated with the privacy of the individual. To identify the last two ethical issues, I'm going to pass this on to my colleague, Vincent.
So the third ethical issue we identified with Facebook, the problem was the Cambridge Analytica scandal. This problem occurred in 2016 with the presidential elections. What happened? What happened was that Facebook knowingly took both public and private information from consumers, in this case, voters in swing states primarily, and gave them targeted advertisements in order to sway their votes. This was a problem because it violated the Stored Communications Act, and as a result, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, actually fined them $5 million. So what is justice? Justice is giving those what is due to them, and in this instance, it would be holding Facebook accountable for their actions. With our proposed DOME system, Facebook would be self-regulated, and it would not require such fines from the FTC because, as Elizabeth said, with subsidiarity, they would be holding themselves accountable, and they would be incentivized to act in an ethical manner. The fourth problem we identified with Facebook was the problem of truth. Truth was prevalent in a law called the California Consumer Privacy Act. This was a law that was passed in 2018, and it was actually implemented on January 1st, 2020, so this year. So there's 5 different sections of this law that we hope to also implement within the DOME system. The first one is to know what personal information is actually being collected about them. This is the consumers. They need to know whenever they sign on to a product or service, what information is being collected about them if it is being collected. The second is to know whether or whom their information is sold or disclosed. This means that not only do they know their information is being sold to third parties or other companies, but what information is being sold to them. The third is to access the personal information that has been collected. This means that if they want to go into a log that says this information has been taken, where it's gone, to know in particular what information is being sold and where it is going, and they can access that. The fourth is to have a business delete their personal information. If they choose to no longer use a product or service, they can opt out and they can delete their information from the server so it can no longer be used by other companies or sold, or by that company themselves. The fifth is to not be discriminated against for exercising their rights under the Act. ISPs or internet service providers such as Verizon cannot throttle your internet speed because of this Act. So that is how truth, that is the problem of truth, and that is the solution through the DOME system. Our system will implement those 5 aspects into it. And Jamal, you want to take it away?
Thank you. So we've identified 4 key areas in which Facebook can ensure that ethics is in play. And we've also explained our ethical framework that will be carried out within the proposed DOME system through the principles of human dignity, subsidiarity, truth, and justice. And the key takeaway that we want you to walk away with today is that data security is something that's really important to consumers, whether it's through human dignity, which we addressed with the Cambridge Analytica scandal about the issue of consumer privacy, whether it's empowering employees to take ownership of their jobs through subsidiarity, promoting transparency by being truthful with how data is being managed by Facebook and its various advertising partners, or ensuring justice by making sure that companies are listening to the grievances of consumers and responding to them. These are all issues in which the DOME system seeks to address. And with that said, thank you for taking the time to listen to us today, and hopefully going forward, you'll decide to implement our system, and we look forward to doing business with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want you to know that you did it with 37 seconds remaining.
Ooh.
You're awesome.
Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. And we will see you again at the end. Well, at the 92nd.
Thank you.
So Michael, the next one is Mount Holyoke.
Got it.
Thanks very much, everyone. Nice job.
Thank you.
Okay, second. Okay.
Hello, Michael. Could you just put Toni-Ann on?
I'm sorry, what was that, Theodosia?
Hello, Michael. Could you just put Toni on? Just Toni.
Got it. 1 second.
Thank you.
Theodosia, while we're waiting, I just want to confirm that you're a consulting firm hired by L'Oreal and that Jim and I are on the board at L'Oreal. Is that correct?
Yeah, but could Michael completely remove me from, like, because we are using Tony's laptop?
Then you might want to just move yourself a little bit further away in the room and just watch them. Would that work? Because you're all on the same slide.
Join again. She's saying that she doesn't want to be a panelist.
So which, remove Theodosia?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All of it. Yes. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Sorry. Let me do that now.
Do you have another thing you can watch then so you can see it?
Yeah, I'm going to watch
great.
that.
Great. Okay, terrific.
All right. Sorry for the confusion.
No, that's sorry.
That means you're buying them dinner tonight, right?
I have no option but to. He will be cooking dinner. Oh, he's gone. How are you guys doing?
Doing very well here.
Okay. That's good.
Well, I share the same state with you. Jim, you're in Minnesota?
Yes, I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Okay.
And I'm in Ashland, Mass.
Right.
A hot spot that I know you all have heard about. Its historic significance in Massachusetts blows you away. Lots of nice country roads.
That's good. That's nice. That's good. So a lot like here. Yeah.
We have more pine trees than you do, but you have a certain special charm around your campus.
Is Michael going to rejoin?
Yeah, sorry. You need something else?
No. So could we start?
You can't. Are you going to move out back to your thing, or what are you doing?
No, I'm gonna be in the frame, so I'm just not talking.
Oh, you're going to be in the frame.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. All right, then terrific. Let me read the 10-minute reminder of what you need to do. You've been called back by the company you gave your full presentation to for a second visit. They've asked you to speak only about the ethical aspects of the problem and to explain why your solution successfully handles any ethical issue. You will have 10 minutes. I'm timing you. There will be no Q&A. You may not use slides or video, and you already have 2 of your 3 team members there. So when you start, I will hit start.
Okay. Okay, so all right, I'm going to begin. And here we go. Good day, everyone. I am Toni-Ann Rankine.
And I am Lerato Mashale.
And we are representing TLT, a consulting company that specializes in supply chain ethics. And today we will be presenting on the ethical problem for your company. The issue here is that your company, L'Oreal, has the moral responsibility to ensure that your products are ethically sourced and free of child labor practices that infringe on these children's human rights. Mica is an important ingredient in many of L'Oreal's highlighting products, which consumers enjoy because of its reflective properties. The increasing market for cosmetics highlighters in turn leads to a demand for artisanal mica mining from India. India is one of the world's largest exporters of mica, where 75% is collected from Bihar and these are among the poorest regions in India, where 1/8 of mica mines are legal, whereas 7 out of 8 of these mines are illegal. What that means is that a majority of mica exported from India comes from illegal mines that make use of child labor under the euphemism of artisanal mining. We know that your company L'Oreal sources its mica from intermediaries, which makes the supply chain very murky. The non-transparent nature of the supply chain means that there is a high probability that L'Oreal is using mica mined from these uncertified mines that utilize child labor. As a major corporation with a market influence of 29.4%, your company has the means and the moral obligation to solve this problem. So, we would like to paint a picture of these mines and how they operate. First, in order to retrieve mica, the mines use the blasting technique to make tunnels into the ground. This blasting method requires the use of dynamite, which also contributes to the increased explosives, related injuries, and fatalities. The mines are designed in such a way that a child's small stature and nimble hands also make them valuable for entering narrow mine shafts and for sorting smaller pieces of mica. The illegal mines that employ these children do not have tools and favorable working conditions, which then put the children in more danger by exposing them to respiratory issues, disabilities, and in many instances, death. We would like you to keep this image in your mind for now, while we move on to discuss the ethical issue and why this should be important for L'Oreal. As I previously stated, L'Oreal is the world's leading cosmetics company because its boast of market share is 29.4% in 2018. This means that L'Oreal has the market power to be at the forefront and advocate for children's rights in these mines. Since your company sources from intermediaries, a counter-argument that you might have is that you are not aware that child labor is what sustains your mica supply chain. However, I want to leave you with a few questions, and I want you to think about these questions. Does the fact that you get your mica from intermediaries absolve you from all the responsibility? Will your customers still enthusiastically purchase your products if they find out that an 8-year-old boy died in a mica mine in order for you to have the shimmer on their faces, your customers? We can all agree that the answer to these questions is a big no. And with that said, I'll pass it over to Lorata, who will talk about the ethical issue at hand in further detail.
The ethical issue at hand is that your company, L'Oreal, has the moral responsibility to ensure that your products are ethically sourced and free of child labor practices that infringe on these children's human rights. According to India's Census Office, child labor is defined as the participation of a child less than 17 years of age in any economically productive activity with or without compensation of wages or profit. Unsafe mining conditions are bad for everyone. If L'Oreal fails to ensure basic safety conditions for these workers, you are failing to treat them as persons worthy of dignity and respect. In these mines, children are particularly vulnerable population because, firstly, they cannot knowledgeably consent to any dangers of working in the mines. Secondly, the health and safety dangers from the development are particularly fatal. The costs to society for failing its children are tremendous. Past social experience have shown early childhood experiences significantly influence their future development mentally and physically. We cannot solely rely on the state to ensure that the children's human rights are protected. For example, in India, the Indian government tried to formulate licensing to stop child labor in Bihar and Jharkhand, but it's taking longer than it should. If L'Oreal continues to source mica from these communities, they are then perpetrating a vicious cycle of exploitation. We know for a fact that it is cheaper to employ children than to employ adults. However, a child's well-being should be worth more than a few extra dollars it takes to pay adults. In the long run, if it is L'Oreal's best interest to rectify this problem in order to make their supply chain sustainable, ethical, and profitable. Child labor is preventable, not inevitable. Effective action against child labor requires children to be placed squarely at the center of programs designed to protect children's rights. We want to highlight that your company has established many initiatives that are aligned with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. One of the goals is to ensure that sustainable consumption and production patterns. So asking you to take initiative in the role of transparency of your supply chain isn't out of your reach. So this leads us to the 3 proposed solutions. Firstly, randomized audits. Secondly, a community forum. And lastly, a school feeding program, which Toni-Ann will further elaborate on.
Okay, so first we propose conducting randomized audits because previously planned audits have led to cover-ups of child labor. Hence, having randomized audits will help your company determine if child labor is present on these mica mining sites, amongst other things. You cannot depend on the intermediaries to provide us with these audits. We would also suggest that L'Oreal creates a department or initiative to spearhead the randomized audits in the mines because you have the responsibility to ensure that the supply chain is ethical. Secondly, we recommend that there is a community forum where your company would be working alongside community leaders. This gives L'Oreal the opportunity to engage transparently with the community and be actively aware of the needs of its people instead of implementing solutions that are not relevant to the needs of the people. Furthermore, priority should be given to nutritional and educational needs of the children, which then brings us to our last solution, which is the schools feeding program. One parent whose child works in the mica mine said, "I know Sandeep doesn't want to do this, but it is what it is. We need to eat." From this, we can see that the mines are an essential part of their livelihoods, and so restricting their access to the mines would be detrimental to these families. After your company solidified its connections with the community, it would be able to decipher what kind of education the children need to stay in school. And this information will help you develop a curriculum that fosters the needs of these communities and their children. L'Oreal's job would be to ensure that each children is enrolled and engaged in an educational curriculum. You will then provide nutritional incentives to keep the children in school. This will also generate revenue for local agricultural sector because you will be paying for the crops and making the food out of these crops, thereby creating a sustainable economy. In the long run, it will cost L'Oreal more money if you are passive about the situation versus if you step to the plate and do what is morally right. You might be prone to further lawsuits, which can impact your company financially and socially. Based on consumption trends, consumers, especially millennials, are willing to purchase products that are ethically sourced, even if they are priced high. To summarize everything that I have said, we are not asking L'Oreal to leave India to minimize your presence in Jharkhand and Bihar. We are asking your company to take a hands-on approach to ensure that mica used in your products is ethically sourced. In conclusion, we would like to highlight your motto, which says, because you are worth it. We entreat you to take an active role in transparency of your supply chain to protect the children of India because they too are worth it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Good job.
Thank you.
You realize you were 11 minutes, however.
Mm-hmm.
However, the content prior to that was powerful. So we're not counting really the last minute in fairness, but everything you did was very strong.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm gonna move you guys off now.
Jim, was that fair to say? Can't hear you. You're muted.
There we go.
Yes.
I do that. Ken does that. If it stops at 10, anything from 10 on is not included in the judging.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I was aligned with.
Yep.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello.
All right.
How's it going?
How is UMass doing?
Good, great.
Not doing too bad.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to did I already? No, I don't think I did. Who are you in this presentation?
So we are Flagship Consulting.
Okay, Flagship Consulting. That's all I need.
Yep.
Thank you. And I'm confirming that we are the whole society of HR managers. We're the board. We're ordinary HR people at a meeting. Set the stage for us.
Yep. So you are taking the role as managers part of the network of the Society for Human Resource Managers, and the setting will be at the conference upcoming.
So you're pitching to managers.
Right.
Essentially, your idea.
Right. Just regular business human resource managers that are part of this network.
Got it.
Great.
And let me confirm that I've got Thomas and I've got Luke and Malcolm. All three of you are doing it?
Just Thomas and Malcolm.
Yeah, no Luke.
Well, that would, if I had looked at my thing, I would have seen that. I had 10 by 2 of your names, but I had a red dot by his. Is he doing the 92nd?
No, I'll be doing the 92nd.
Okay, well then, Luke just got a red mark, and it doesn't matter. It could have been a green mark. The color doesn't mean anything here. Okay, I'm going to read the 10-minute presentation approach. I'm going to start when you start talking and officially start.
Great.
And I just want to remind you that what you may have overheard from Mount Holyoke, that at 10 minutes, we're going to stop listening.
Okay.
I mean, feel free to keep talking if you want to finish your thoughts, but
no, that's okay. That's fine.
We're going to stop at that point. All right.
Sounds good.
You have been called back by the company you gave your organization you gave your full presentation to for a second visit. They've asked you to speak only about the ethical aspects of the problem and to explain why your solution successfully handles any ethical issues. You will have 10 minutes. There will be no Q&A. You may not use slides or video, and you already have the 2 people on your team who will be presenting. When you're ready, we're ready.
Great. Okay, well, thank you again for having us at this pre-conference breakout session. And what we really think of as a conversation regarding AI and bias, and more particularly the implications for the hiring processes that these artificial systems pose against human resources collectively. So to start, I guess, with just an underlying definition of what artificial is, just to kind of be able to wrap your heads around these software systems. And we like to start with explaining what an algorithm is. So an algorithm historically has been used to mathematically calculate simple solutions that businesses can use on efficiency. Well, in the world today, what we see is human resource departments and every company using AI really in the decision-making process for their recruits. And as Malcolm will explain in a little bit, this could really pose potential. This could pose a potential for unintentional biases that are inherent in these systems. So again, we just really want to get this conversation rolling. With that, Malcolm here is going to take you further into the bias issues inherent in these systems, and then I'm going to wrap it up with some recommendations and solutions that are going to attach to these bias issues.
Thanks, Tommy. So in order to understand sort of the ethics of this problem, I want to sort of talk about the relevant stakeholders in it. So, it's an ethical value for us to, treat people with equality and equity. And sort of, if you think about the stakeholders, you have the employees, the HR managers or employers, then you have, the shareholders of the company, of course, and then sort of society and the law at large. With employees, it's sort of, we value discrimination, freedom from discrimination. And employees sort of value, they want to be treated equally. They want to sort of have equal opportunity and full realization on the job. They want to be a good fit at the same time. And, part of that, be part of an inclusive culture. And for the employers, sort of a value for an employer is to have an AI solution in place that sort of has a very extensive sort of, search capabilities so we can get the right productive people in hiring. We want predictive accurate models as an employer. And for the shareholders, you want to maximize sort of the business value. You want to make sure that the HR dollars are sort of being spent the right way and to maximize sort of business value there. And so in sort of society, I guess, equal opportunity and freedom of bias is a social value of a society, and it's reflective in our laws. And if, we see that in the law is the minimum requirement for ethical behavior under, Title VII, to prevent unlawful discrimination. And so when we think of sort of the law as a minimum requirement, we have to sort of talk about the ethics specifically to the solution. So I want to talk about sort of, there's really two variables when thinking about actual AI models. And it's this trade-off, specifically the trade-off between predictive accuracy versus fairness. You could sort of think about this sort of like a Pareto curve. If you had, error on the x-axis and y-axis would be some sort of fairness. There's a balance and a trade-off between these two variables. So as you get more over-inclusive with, predictive accuracy, there's going to be some bias that creeps in there, and vice versa. And so it's, for your organization, it's up to you guys to sort of find that sweet spot and that balance for your company. We don't know the answer to that, and it's very sort of tailored to what you're looking for. But you have to know that you have to have some both. You can't have very predictive accurate models because there's going to be some bias that creeps in there. And this is a decision that you cannot leave to the technology or the computer scientists or the AI solutions themselves. You as business leaders must, plant the seeds of conversation now and sort of bring that up now, because the technology is not going to solve that issue, and it's going to exacerbate it. Because often at times a misconception about algorithms where people go wrong is they think that AI can solve bias problems. They can, they certainly can. But there also can be bias problems that creep in. So you need to sort of address that and find that right balance. I'm going to move to Tommy here to give you some final recommendations after some considerations.
Yeah, thanks again, Malcolm. And with regard to what he's saying, there's ample research that kind of backs all of these claims, where there is this trade-off really within these systems, embedded in these systems, between fairness and error. And the choice, again, is up to you as an organization to make on your own terms. We are not here providing specific solutions and to give specific recommendations to what types of artificial systems you should be using as a company, but rather take a step back and look at artificial systems holistically and realize at a high level there's a potential for bias embedded within these systems. So I'd like to kind of wrap it up with giving you guys appropriate approaches to handling these issues as human resource managers. So the first thing I would say in order to move forward with this type of technology is actually taking a step back and being reflective on your values at SHRM and being reflective on your values at your host organizations, and saying every step of the way in using artificial intelligence systems, we should be adhering to these values. Secondly, I would say to understand the technology, you know, implement research and implement systems to test this technology before actually integrating it within your own systems. Again, this is going to be crucial in having a general scope of what this technology is doing to your hiring department. And in doing so, you're going to want to enlist technology experts throughout your human resources departments that can really understand this technology and relay back to you in English terms what the bias concerns that are being risen through these software systems are saying. And you as human resource managers can actually act on that information. You know, moving forward, we'd like to think that you as human resource managers will have a strategy to limit this bias in the use of vendors. So we understand that it's not financially viable for most companies in SHRM's organization to actually create their own artificial softwares and rather to outsource these softwares from third-party vendors. But we want to make sure that you're being selective in that process, you know, and choosing vendors that align their values with your company values with regards to ethics. And they also allow you to start small, you know, and they're not these vendors shouldn't be pressing you to really fully integrate their systems, but maybe to pick apart certain aspects of their systems that are working. You know, moving forward, we'd like you to have a review process at your own host organizations, you know, taking people from the human resource department and creating maybe an ethical review board within your host organizations to really streamline this process and make sure everything is going accordingly. You know, moving forward, we'd like to think that this process holistically could be published from your companies on a public forum. You know, this is that issue of transparency, and we see this with every single ethical issue. It's super important to really relay every step of the process and the results on a public forum so that everyone kind of knows what it is exactly you're trying to tackle with these systems in terms of preventing bias, but also in creating a system that's accurate and fair for your prospective employees. And last but not least, we want to make sure that you're you know, leading the way in the regulatory process. As human resource managers, you know, then the companies in SHRM's network really has the potential to pave the way legislatively speaking. You know, we want to make sure that you are in charge as human resource managers of writing that narrative and making sure that that narrative is very reflective of your goals and your ethical guidelines instead of undermining all of your values. So with that, again, we'd like to say thank you for joining in on this conversation about AI and its potential for bias. And we're open to any questions that you may have in the next session.
Thanks very much. You had 50 seconds you could have used, just so you know.
Okay.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Tom, I'm sorry, Jim, how do you, what do you recommend? Michael, can we bring back everybody now or to talk about feedback, or is that too much for the system?
No, that's
we're not
fine.
going to do that now.
We'll do that
We're not
after.
doing that.
Let's do that all at the end. Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That wouldn't be what I wanted to do. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jim for the 90 seconds.
Okay, thanks. And let's, well, actually, UMass, you are starting out on the, so
Yes.
do we have the right people?
Yeah, it'll just be me for that.
Yeah, okay, Tommy. Okay,
so Michael, I could be removed.
We'll remove Malcolm and move him into attendee status.
There we go. Jim, do you want me to bring in the other two up front, or do you want to just, I guess we don't really need to at this point.
I think we'll just go with the one. The others can watch, right? They're under their attendees, so they can watch. Okay.
Jim, are you going to do your own timing?
Yes, I will do my timing. Yes.
All right.
Tommy, welcome back. I heard they call you Tommy, so I hope it's okay if I call you Tommy as well.
That's
okay.
Great.
And of course, you have seen this online, but we always read these rules to everyone just so everyone has them. Now, this is a 90-second presentation, and we'd like you to imagine that you are an employee of the company whose case you've been studying. You are at a meeting in which people are discussing the issue. However, no one has brought up ethics, and there's a pause in the conversation. You have 90 seconds in which to convince the other people at the meeting that there are ethical issues that need to be addressed. You don't have to argue for the solution. You just need them to see that there are serious ethical issues here. And obviously, one member of the team will do this. Do you have any questions, Tommy?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, I'm going to start the timer right now. Welcome, and you can start whenever you like.
Great. So I think diversity and inclusion is something that really hasn't been touched upon too much in this meeting regarding AI and its potential for efficiency throughout our organization. Now, I think these AI systems actually pose a great potential for unintentional bias, even though us as human resource managers are actually, we like to think of ourselves as ethical in the hiring process holistically. It may be that these systems we're not being too careful enough with, and I think that as part of really reflecting the values that we have in these systems, we need to take the appropriate approaches to implement these systems and integrate them in our organization. So in doing so, I think one of the things maybe we should think about doing is having a peer review process, or even a process of peer review audits where maybe a board from our company could take a look at the software that we're planning on integrating and implementing, and making sure that every technical aspect along the way is actually answering these questions of unintentional bias and discrimination. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our workplace is as diverse and inclusive as humanly possible. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tommy, and you came in just perfectly at 85 seconds. So thank you very much, and we will move you out now. And the next group we're going to come back with is, of course, Mount Holyoke.
Should be Tony.
Hello, Tony. You wanna take yourself off mute?
Hello, sorry, this is Theodosia on Tony's laptop.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I have to remember that. Yeah, okay. Now, we realize that you have probably seen these already on the website, but just to be fair to everyone, I'm going to read these same rules to you and everybody else. Now, we'd like you to imagine that you are an employee of the company whose case you've been studying. Mm-hmm. You're at a meeting in which people are discussing the issue, but nobody has brought up ethics. There's a pause in the conversation. You have 90 seconds in which to convince the other people at the meeting that there are serious ethical issues that need to be addressed. Mm-hmm. You don't have to argue for a solution. You just need them to see that there are serious ethical issues here. One member of the team will do this. Do you have any questions before you start?
No, I just want to clarify that I'm Theodosia. That's it.
Yes, yes, that one I do have. Yeah. And I'm going to be timing you at 90 seconds. Anything beyond 90 seconds, we will not include in the judging. And if you have no other questions, welcome. We're glad to have you, and you can begin whenever you like.
Thank you. The ethical problem here is that our company, L'Oreal, has the moral responsibility to ensure that our products are ethically sourced and free of child labor. This is because the use of child labor infringes on the fundamental human rights of these kids. One, L'Oreal sources most of its mica from India, specifically Jharkhand and Bihar. In India, 1/8 of mica mines are legal. This means that a majority of mica that is exported from India are from illegal or uncertified mines that utilize child labor under the euphemism or pretense of artisanal mining. Because we source mica through intermediaries, we can say that we are not responsible for how the mica is mined. However, I want to remind you that we've created many initiatives that are aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. One of these goals are to ensure sustainable consumption through end production patterns. Additionally, as a signatory of the UN Global Compact, we've made a pledge to respect and promote human rights. If we take an active role in ensuring that our supply chain of mica is transparent and free of child labor, we would be adhering to these commitments. I'm not saying that we need to remove ourselves completely from Jharkhand and Bihar. I'm saying that we need to lean into these communities, not just for our minerals, but for our social corporate responsibility, because the people of Jharkhand and Bihar are worth it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You came in plenty of time under the 90 seconds, so we appreciate that. We appreciate you telling your story. As people that are sitting around you, we certainly do understand now that you are bringing up an issue. So you have met those guidelines. Thank you very much, and we will move you out, and we will come back with our final folks, which is Catholic University.
Sorry, who was it from Catholic University? Do you guys have? If you guys are in attendees, if you could raise your hand.
Sean?
Sean, okay.
Sean O'Grady.
Sean O'Grady is coming in, yes.
Okay, great. Don't see Sean in the list. Sean, are you listed under a different name?
That's
okay.
They told us that Sean was coming, and I don't know that he was actually on at that point, and that he was doing the 90-second.
Yeah, he's under a different name here. Let's see. No, wrong one.
He might be under my name.
Okay, there's two here. Yeah, let me try.
You can try and bring him in, and then you can take me out. Okay. Just so you know who's who.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
Okay.
I forwarded the link just so everyone would know which email to hop on, and
Nope, that's not him.
It's really hard going online, but you guys, everyone's doing an amazing job of adapting.
Yeah, thank you for adapting your judging for the online format as well. We appreciate that. Okay, here's Sean.
Okay, do you guys see me?
Yeah.
Okay.
How is my audio? Is my audio good?
It is.
Good. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Sean, welcome. We're glad to have you. And you are from Catholic University, and what we'd like to do is read you the rules for the 90-second presentation.
Does this sound good for audio? You can hear me clearly?
Yes. And I will read to you the rules that we read to everybody, even though you've probably seen them before. Imagine that you are an employee of the company whose case you've been studying. You're at a meeting in which people are discussing the issue. However, nobody has brought up ethics. There's a pause in the conversation. You have 90 seconds in which to convince other people at the meeting that there are ethical issues that need to be addressed. You don't have to argue for a solution. You just need them to see that there are serious ethical issues here. One member of the team will do this. Sean, did you have any questions before we begin? I'm going to time you. You have 90 seconds, and I won't cut you off right at 90 seconds. However, anything that's beyond 90 seconds will not be considered as part of the judging. And I will start the timer as soon as you start talking. Again, welcome, Sean, and please begin.
Hey, so one of the things that keeps getting talked about in this meeting is the sense of kind of using data as a means to put people over profits. And that's something that all business leaders love to talk about. But the truth is, it's not really happening when you look at something like end user agreements. Here at Goldfinch Partners, we always talk about basically that the increasing transparency will equal increasing consumer trust. And in turn, increasing consumer trust will equal profits. But one of the things that end user agreements do is they're really using the American legal system to hide behind agreements that people don't understand. So if we're wanting to be ethical with the consumer, we have to be honest with them with things that they actually are able to read. And I guarantee you 99% of the population doesn't read these user agreements fully, as shown by research. So I think the best thing to do is to kind of lower the burden in terms of that, and make these transparent for all customers, not just people who are interested or understand the full legal extent of these agreements. So let's condense it, make it more easier to read. And also, let's just remember that we're trying to appeal to the average consumer here, and not everyone will be able to take the time or the effort to understand these fully. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You were at 85 seconds, so everything you said is considered, and we sure appreciate that. And what we will do now, Michael, is, shall we bring everybody back in?
Yeah, let me start bringing people back in. Raise your hand if I miss you.
And Michael, what do I need to hit in order to see everyone? Right now I've got the big rectangles.
So you want to see everybody all up on the screen?
Ideally, I can. Now, stupidly, my Zoom screen is up, and I'm moving it over to the side, but I only have a half screen for this. I don't know whether we get a full screen or whether it's...
They should start...
Mount Holyoke made it easy for us. Thank you, guys.
Let's see. Somebody else?
Okay, now I've got full screen. How
Okay.
hard was that? Not at all.
Okay. All right, I believe that's everybody. Again, if I did miss you, just raise your hand in the chat.
Okay, it looks like I see all of Mount Holyoke. I see all of UMass. So I'm looking for Catholic University. And I see Jamal.
We're all here.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so we've got everyone from UMass and everyone from Catholic University, right?
I believe we're all here.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. Now, there wasn't really an end time to this session. It's now after 1. Are you all okay staying for feedback?
No problem. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Jim, do you want to do this, that we take one school at a time and we give feedback for the 10 and the 90 in sequence? Or do you think we should do all the 10-minute first and then all the 90 second?
Let's do it school by school.
I like that
10,
better.
10,
Okay.
10, 90, yeah.
All right, so let's start with, and Jim and I are both going to give feedback on the 10-minute. I will start first. And you realize that ideally we would have had time to think about this and, process it and not do stuff off the fly. So I'm willing to volunteer after Monday if any of you want to have more detailed feedback. More than happy to follow up with me on this. The email address is strategy@fgi.net. It's probably listed somewhere, but anyway. So in terms of, I liked very much that you all had clear roles. Your conversation with Facebook was on point. You gave them a lot of good information. I think that you all seem to have, presence and poise. I think that one thing you might consider in the future is that you gave some preliminaries in the beginning, and there was a lot of technical information that you all had. And I think that it would have been particularly effective to make sure that there were clear themes. I mean, you gave the effectiveness of ethics, how that changes the company, and that was done really well. In the 4 keys that you had for human dignity, you went through them very quickly, and that was all good, but I was wondering if you had focused on that more, perhaps you could have given a little bit more solution rather than just creating the bigger picture. Does that make sense? I know it's very hard in 10 minutes to do that. I think you did an excellent job with the command of the material that you had, but you took on a very challenging subject, which is to your credit. And I'm just thinking that there might have been a way to have made sure that the actual recommendations had whatever additional information you think a company needs to know in order to implement it, rather than the bigger picture. Does that make sense?
So you're saying on a more practical level, the implementation versus just the problem?
You're solving the problem, so it's useful to make sure that there's a little more. I'm just suggesting, you did a great job with the overview. I'm just suggesting that one thing you might consider is to give a little more detail about how they might do that, so that it is clear that you're suggesting what you expect. For example, when you're talking about the personal, that they know the personal information, if there was something different about, if there's a lapse in what they're doing now for people to know personal information, you might just throw out the idea. You're doing X, but you're not doing Y in this. And if you don't do Y, it isn't necessarily going to be as effective. So that you narrow in. You covered the waterfront beautifully. I'm just suggesting you might have considered letting go of something else to kind of hone in on whatever it was you thought was really important, with giving a little more to it. Jim?
Yes, okay. And we are looking at Catholic University first. Here we go. In talking to the Facebook board of directors. I certainly enjoyed your 10-minute, but I'm only going to be talking about the 90
Jim, you can also give feedback on the 10. No,
is
absolutely.
that okay with you? Okay.
Oh, absolutely. We're giving feedback. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let me change my place here.
You can tell that we're doing this online for the first time. Yeah.
What I did like is I am definitely going to agree with Gail's points. What I liked was that you at least started out by saying, we have these individual issues here. And so I thought, excellent. Then I lost a little bit of track as to what these individual issues were. I think that probably if this would be an opportunity if you had PowerPoints. Of course, you didn't have them and you weren't allowed to have them. But I did get a little lost as when one stopped and another point started. And another piece in talking to Facebook is that there was a lot of third person. I felt like you were referring to Facebook as they. However, you were talking to Facebook's board of directors, and also giving some information that any board of directors of a company is already going to know. And for instance, their whole Cambridge problem, they are more than aware and finding themselves in a lot of pain over that situation. And so they really don't need to be reminded of that. So when you are giving a consulting presentation like that, it's important to address your audience as we or you, and not in the third person. So I didn't feel spoken to directly, even though the information itself was very good. I liked the subsidiarity. I thought that was a very interesting point to bring up. And that is one of those words that you don't hear very often. And I think that was very educational to the board of directors to talk about subsidiarity. It's one of those, what do I want to call it? It's one of those catchy, cool new terms. And I think it's important to be bringing some of those pieces in because it helps to educate people. And in your 90-second presentation, I also enjoyed a lot of the parts that you brought up, and I really liked the idea that you brought in, the idea of people over profits, and that is something that is not only important, but you can also bring up the fact that we don't have to make a choice. And that sometimes when we choose people over profits, we actually increase our profits. And that's a very important piece to always bring up. I wish that ethics departments were reclassified as profit centers and not as cost centers in organizations, because I really believe that we can solve a lot of good all at the same time. But very, very nice job. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sean, what I would add to that, I loved the fact that you didn't try to be Facebook, that you took your own consulting company, and I think we all have signed these agreements with not a clue of what's in them. So I thought it was a novel and an interesting approach to do that, and it was a very effective way of giving voice to values, which is part of what this 90-second is for all of us. You know, it's reminding us that we need to speak up once we get hired and we're in companies. So I thought that was great, and I thought that in summary, I thought that that Catholic University took on a really complicated subject, and there's a lot of good points in what you did and said. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you both.
Thank you for feedback. Thank you.
And next we will have Mount Holyoke. And I'll start on the 10-minute, and then Jim will give feedback on it. I thought that the research was really evident in what you did, and I appreciated that. I thought that I liked that you were not chastising L'Oreal in terms of righteousness, but you were reminding them of their market share and reminding them that they are the leading cosmetic company. So there's a sense of expectation about what they need to have. You weren't throwing reputation at them, you were throwing something higher, which is you are a leader in the field, which I think can be more effective sometimes than just talking about PR. I liked that the questions that you wanted to leave them with about absolved from responsibility and the image of the 8-year-old boy, emotionally powerful and very useful. Again, no self-righteousness, just a simple question. I thought that was good. I think that I love the line preventable but not inevitable. And I think that you were talking about the accountability of them in a way that you raised the question, which I think L'Oreal and all companies already know, that they can't be simply depending on a third party to do it. But I think that you gave some specifics about the audit and the kind of process that you wanted. I got a little lost on the school feeding program. I guess what you were suggesting was that you expected them to pay more money for adults and have the children completely out of the mines. Is that true? That little clarification, while it seems obvious, the only time you really knowing the tremendous economic impact that these families depend on in terms of the kids working.
Yeah.
It might have been helpful to suggest that and I think you said you'll pay more. You might have tied into whatever you're going to pay the adults, you would be paying much more in all of the fees and whatever. But as with Catholic University, great job. Thank you very much. Jim?
Thank you. You really brought out some interesting points, and I think even though L'Oreal, of course, knows that they have a 29.4% market share, I still found it very interesting that some of these companies have a lot bigger market share than we think, and through their subsidiaries, et cetera, I'm sure L'Oreal has a lot of other things going and their face care products. I'm sure they have other things going. So I think it's important that you brought that up. I also really liked the fact that I wrote down each of the avenues that you brought up, and they were very clear: cost to society, and moral obligation, dignity, respect, equity. And you were very clear on those, and I think those are very important things that get overlooked if you don't state them very clearly. And I think that you really did, and I appreciate that. I also. Oh, yeah, and you also got into the idea that this is not just necessarily a cost; it can be a money-saving sort of thing as well. I like your solutions. I would agree with Gail that I did get a little bit lost in them, but I thought the randomized audits things were good, and department to spearhead the audiences, the community forum. I did enjoy those. I thought that those were good. It's always good to show solutions when you are acting in a consulting capacity. I liked that. One thing that I would recommend that you think about going forward is, it was quite obvious that you were reading your presentation, or it was worst case, best case, over memorized. And so I didn't always feel like you had totally internalized everything. Preparation is an important piece in presenting. Over preparation to the point where you're reading can take away from the piece where you are a human being, and this is a very human topic, and you possibly could have brought more emotion into it. But I think that the information that you gave, the 8-year-old boy, was excellent, and possibly just about a little bit more drama and a little bit less of the flat delivery of information through reading would have been helpful. But I I learned things from it. I enjoyed it, and I really found. Oh, I also really liked you're getting into the fact that just because we are a third party here does not absolve us. You talked about buying the mica from another party, and there are some companies say, well, what do we know? We just buy it. You got around that. You said you can't say that because you still have a responsibility with the people that you buy from. So I appreciate that. I got some good information I learned from you, and I sure appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you're going to do the 90-second?
Oh, that was overall. It was all in there.
Okay, great. I thought for the 90-second that it was. I agree with Jim about the importance of the emotion. But I thought that the 90-second. I didn't make specific notes about it, but I think that I wasn't sure if your lead-in was as directly talking to employees. I picked up halfway through that it sounded that way. In the beginning, it sounded a little bit like the 10-minute talk. And then it felt like you were orienting it then in the second half to the specifics. And I thought that was the strongest part of the 90-second, when you were actually talking as an employee. But certainly the content was great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And UMass. I thought that the last 2/3 of the presentation was really the strongest. I thought that you moved away from more generic setting the stage of AI and defining terms, which I can see that to a degree you might, wanted to have done. But I thought what got really interesting was when you really focused on the ethics piece and some of it was about 3.5 minutes in, you started to talk about the challenges that they face. And then you had some really, in the last, I guess, 4 minutes, you had some really, really great information about what they should be thinking and what they should be doing and the frame of reference. You knew they weren't decision makers particularly, but you were trying to educate them about how they could be more effective in what is a dicey problem. And some of your suggestions, I think, were particularly good. The having a strategy to limit bias. I'm sure everyone has a strategy about discrimination and stuff, but the whole idea of those words seem to suggest that maybe there's another level to that strategy, or there's something more specific and digging in deeper that people could do. The ethical review board was interesting. Choosing vendors that align with your values. It might have been helpful if you had in fact suggested what some of those values might be to align people. We all disagree sometimes about values. They can all mean different things. And certainly somebody's mission statement and all of that can have values. You might have given an example that said if your values are fairness, or if your value is X, then it's particularly important that you make sure that's carried through everything to do with the AI. But what I thought it was great that you gave them the starting small, the publishing it on a public platform. And I especially liked that SHRM and they had the potential to impact regulation, or at least to propose and to take an active, not a passive role in how AI is going to is going to impact companies, and what they're not just responsible to foist it off on government. They have a key role in thinking through what is missing and what's needed that, makes it a much more active, a much more, tangible and effective, I think, way of HR people owning the problem that you suggested. So very good. Thank you. Jim, your thoughts on the 10? Yes,
I really enjoyed the information, and some of my comments here are the exact same as Gail's, and so I won't get too much into that piece. But I really enjoyed talking about unintentional bias is just so huge, and I think that we're just beginning to understand the importance of unintentional bias, and I don't feel like you rammed it down the throats of your audience in a way that would be counterproductive, and I see some of that happening out there. I do think that there's a difference between being with your audience and at your audience, and there were times when I felt like you were just coming at me very, very, very hard. And there's a place for that. And I don't want to suggest that there's never a place for that. But there were times where I felt myself backing up a little bit, because I just felt like you were selling an idea, but you weren't involving me as much in it. And I think that had you put in a few little examples here and there, just little snippets, little 10 seconds, like not unlike the 8-year-old child in talking to L'Oreal. There are just a couple of examples, because you're talking about something that not everybody can understand as well. AI is a wonderful field, and the day will come when we have a better feel for it. Right now, I think that we're all we think it's a Spielberg movie or something along that line. So I think your role is to educate as much as it is to sell ideas. But I really thought you had a lot of great information in there as well. And these comments will come for the 90-second as well. One thing I want to mention is that for your team, there were many what we call equivocators. Some people call them weasel words. And you always want to watch out for these. And these are the terms like sort of and kind of and I guess, and I wrote all these down and put check marks after them because there were a lot of those. And you had a lot of good information, and you have every reason to believe in what it is that you say. And anytime that you use an equivocator, you're taking away from your own perceived intelligence and credibility. So that's just something I'm going to tell you going forward in your careers. In any situation that you have, you don't need to take away from your own beliefs by saying, sort of, kind of. I'm sort of going to talk about this. No, you're going to talk about this. You're not sort of going to talk about it. So that is just, and this is a problem I see a lot, and I don't want to suggest to you that this is a terrible thing. I'm only suggesting to you that this is something you want to work on going forward. An overall piece I would give to all of you is that for just a moment there, while we were doing the 10 minutes, I had to think, wait a minute, am I doing grad programs here or undergrad programs? Because I think your analyses were at, a lot of them were at the graduate level, and very, very professional, very, very well thought out. And I teach mainly in graduate programs. And what I saw here, I just thought, wow, I wish I had some brochures from my graduate school to hand out to you to get you to come to our school, because I really thought that there was some high level stuff going on there, and I really appreciated that. So to all the teams, thank you very much. Really enjoyed your presentations, and we'll let Gail close it out.
Thank you.
I was going to add to the 90-second. I especially liked, and I would have liked to have heard more about the last point, because I'm not sure that people really think about that. I think I didn't take down exactly what you said, Tommy, but it had something to do with, it was not assuming that that technical equipment answers the right questions, and how you need to go into and make sure that those questions are being answered. I thought that was something that was a really powerful thing, and I just wanted to call that out. I agree with Jim. I think it was extraordinarily difficult for you three teams to be doing what you did, for all the IBECC teams, but we're talking to you. I think that there were all kinds of obstacles that had to be overcome in the last several months. And none of you were shy about taking challenging subjects that had a lot of complexity that would have been a heck of a lot easier sitting in a room together with various research things going and iterating back and forth. That wasn't part of what you all could do. It was a much more formal screen to screen or phone to phone kind of process. And it didn't stop you. You came to IBECC with the important skills of caring about your subject, caring enough to stay in it in spite of the challenges that you had, and following directions and delivering to what IBECC tries to set up. Because what makes the program so special is that it's not just about who wins awards and what happens in college. It's about changing your way of thinking that will make you the kind of professional that is going to enhance your career, and the kind of leader that is going to make a difference in organizations. So it's wonderful that you all are doing this. I think that you've done a terrific job, And I just want to add my congratulations. I hope you feel now that it's, let's ask you, how do you feel now that it's over?
Relieved.
Glad.
I'm sorry, what?
Grateful. We are grateful.
Grateful. Well, I think you all deserve huge credit. I'll look forward to seeing you on Monday night. And if you have any questions of us, please follow up. Anybody have any questions quickly now?
So how does the, I know in former years they split the rankings into brackets due to the limited pool this year. Do you know how that's going to work?
You know, I don't, but I have a feeling Tom's going to explain that to us on Monday.
Okay. No problem. Just curious about that.
Yeah, no, and if I knew, I'd tell you. What, Jim?
Yeah, no, Gail is right. You can actually look on the website and look at the schedule. There's a spreadsheet that lists out the divisions, and you can look there. Your division changes for the undergrad. Your division changes between the 25-minute and this session here. You are looking at your competitors for the 10 and the 90 right now. This is the division. What division you were in the 25-minute, we don't have that information, but it is on the website, so you can definitely find that. And again, I'll just add thank you so much. One more thank you to Michael Rainier. We could not do this without Michael.
Oh, absolutely.
He's such a good friend to all of us, and if you had to have us old Uber judges try to figure out technology on our own, it would be a disaster. So it was just, as always, such a treat to work with Michael. I wish we were all together so we could hang out. So thank you. I hope that you enjoyed IBECC. I hope that you will speak to some of the people at your school and report on your experience. And we will be back next year. Yes. We will of course be back next year. Our plan is to be in Boston, live, not virtual. And we would love to have all of your schools join us again next year and in the future.